Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Dr. Shelley Kaehr, who's here to share with us her new book, Past Lives in Ancient Lands and Other Worlds. Understand your soul's journey through time. So, Dr. Shelley is a world-renowned past life regressionist. Her method of combining energy work with hypnosis has been endorsed by numerous leaders in the field of consciousness, including near-death experience pioneer Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Brian Weiss. She's been prominently featured in the media, including Coast to Coast and William Shatner's Weird or What. So let's welcome to the show Dr. Shelley Kaehr.
Marianne, it's so great to be with you.
Oh, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your new book. Is this something that's been on your mind for some time?
That is so funny you say that because this is exactly the book that I've been wanting to write for years and years, and it's finally here. I'm so happy.
Well, I'm so happy too because we kind of dive in deeper to some of the topics I think a lot of people have questions about, especially when we get to past life regressions and maybe a little more.
Yes, it definitely goes into different places that I don't normally cover, or I should say I have never covered some of these places in a lot of my other books. But over the many years, they're just different places that people have reported about over the years. So just trying to give readers also a lot of guided imagery and experiences that they can try themselves at home as well. So
Yeah, the book is filled with information. So before we go too far down the road, why don't you explain to our listeners what regressions are? Because I think sometimes people, maybe they just don't understand what that is.
yeah, the past life regression to me is really, it's a healing modality. That's the way I look at it, where using guided imagery and well, we could say it's hypnosis, of course. It's just basically taking your brain waves into the meditative state, following a guided imagery script and relaxing the body. You go down into a space where I begin asking questions that will lead you through various steps that will allow you to see where you may have existed in previous incarnations. And so it's really, to me, a modality, like a healing modality, because we could get into all of these speculations about whether or not the information that people come up with is real or not. But, from a healing standpoint, people can always tell themselves stories about things that happened to them in the past. And then when they're asked, okay, well, great, why does that stuff that you were doing in the Middle Ages apply to what we're doing now? And people always have answers for that. They go, oh, wow, you know what? I was doing the same thing then, and I'm doing the same thing now. And either that was a great thing and we want to do more of it, or that was not what we want to do. And so we want to notice that so that we can start making changes in our life. So people just have all kinds of information bubble up, similar to like dream imagery, I would say. We don't always understand where it's coming from. I guide them through just going with it, seeing what messages, what learnings and teachings can come from that. And then again, the best way to utilize it to heal and to transform is to understand that this subconscious material then can be used to help us make our current life and our current situation happier and more fulfilling, which is really the whole reason why we would do this in the first place.
So having this information that's a lot of times locked in the subconscious is once that's revealed to them, is that something that the subconscious works with, going, oh, okay, I understand all these points fit?
Yeah, there's a real epiphany. I got into the work really because of the transformational past life regression that I had had personally many years ago. I had a friend who passed away, and I was really upset with very deep, painful, unresolved grief for many years. And somebody suggested that I have a regression. And so the way I experienced it was you're going into these different spaces and these different times. You're seeing that you've known this person before, in my case, and they passed away early, and it was very sad as usual. And there was just something about just looking at a problem through a new lens from a different vantage point that for me, it was like somebody just snapped my fingers and I said, okay, guess what? I don't need to do this anymore. I get it. I understand. Everybody has a time to live, a time to die. We all have a purpose. It was just like a real epiphany. Like I didn't need to carry this stuff around anymore. And so when people are in that space, usually they pursue the past life regression in the first place, sometimes out of curiosity, but normally it's because something's not going well in life. So, we have a lot of relationship challenges, or maybe they want to create a new path for themselves and they feel stuck. So whatever that issue is that they're working on, the goal is to go into this guided space and just ask the soul to be guided back to an origin point where this issue first manifested itself. So theoretically, that could happen, a couple of decades ago, or it could have happened a few thousand years ago. And so once we access that origin point, then the person experiences this little story. And sometimes, again, just getting out of the box, really out of the box in this case, to say the least, and just looking at a problem with new perspective, just immediately, as you said, it just makes them go, oh, wow, you know what? I see a pattern I was doing, or this feels familiar and I don't need to do it anymore, or this is wonderful. And they just are amazingly able to just make really powerful changes very quickly.
For those that say, well, I can't do this, I can't be hypnotized, or I'm afraid you're going to put something in my subconscious, that's not something that can happen, right?
It sounds, that's a very common concern, actually. And it sounds like that would be possible, but something very profound happens when you slow down the breath, you calm the body, and brain waves that are normally going very, very quickly in beta wavelengths start to slow down into alpha, and we're breathing. And you would think, okay, I'm not in control. But the truth is you are actually in more control over what's going on with you than you are in regular waking consciousness. So there's a real built-in protective system in the soul. You're going to always go to the things that are for your highest good. You're going to experience things that you're able to digest and understand. And it's some of the scenes that people see or feel or hear, or however it is that they do that, because people receive this information differently, are just flashing in so quickly that we're not really going into anything traumatic. We're just popping into things and just noticing them very matter-of-factly, but then able to, again, by floating over them, kind of getting a different vantage point, a bird's eye view, if you will, just being able to really easily understand how that fits in with the larger soul purpose and the person's life.
How do people tend to feel after they've had a regression?
That's so funny. They're very, I'm just laughing because almost everyone will just come back from that. They'll open their eyes and go, oh, just almost gasp and go, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Or they'll go, whoa, where did that come from? Because that's the other thing that happens. I think we spend a lot of our waking consciousness worrying about things that never happened or never will happen. And so even when people are considering past lives, they might have in their mind what they think is going to be the outcome. And then when they go into those spaces, similarly, again, to the way dream imagery comes up, these pictures, thoughts, and feelings are coming up out of nowhere. And sometimes it's just things that you just never would have made up yourself. You never could have come up with this. And so they just think, wow, to me, that makes it more valid. That and the fact that, we're not normally experiencing ourselves as celebrities or famous people. We're just normal people just getting through life. And so the quickness of it and just the immediacy of it. And again, the content out of it is so unusual that I think it takes people by surprise in a good way.
Well, I love how you start the first chapter. Your life is like an epic journey. And I think when we look at life that way, it really kind of puts things more into place about how our journey is. Because I think a lot of times people get stuck in, oh, I did bad in this, or the negative self-talk.
Gosh, you're so right. I mean, we really are the heroes and heroines of our own stories. And when we experience these events that happen to us in prior incarnations, and it is being shown to us like a story or like a movie that we would go see on the big screen or something, then we just get a bigger picture of ourselves. And we are hard on ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. And I think one of the big gifts that you get is that we know that life isn't perfect. We're not perfect. Everyone's here to learn and grow. And I think some of this ability to get into a different perspective can really help put our current situations into perspective. So hopefully we can just give ourselves a break and just show ourselves a little bit of compassion and grace.
I think we can all use a little compassion and grace right now. So,
Yes.
oh my goodness. Well, and so you share about documenting our journey. So, how do you do that?
I'm a huge believer in keeping journals. I've always kept journals throughout my life. And in all of my books, I've got tons of guided journeys that people are going on. And so people, I guide them to, if they would like to, they could even take an app, record the journeys, use them. But if you're going to take this effort to uncover the inner workings of the soul, then I do think it's very important to keep track of the things that you're coming up with, because just taking a few notes, just kind of jotting down what happened or just key points that you want to remember, you just never know down the road of life when those notes are going to become valuable. Or maybe you got a small piece of the puzzle today, because as you know, as we all know, life is a journey and we don't always get the full picture right away. So some years down the road, the next piece of the puzzle may come in and it may fit in with something you had earlier. So I think it's really important to keep a journal, and that doesn't have to be anything daunting. I mean, we could just open up an app in our phone. We send ourselves a text message. I've been known to do that, Marianne. Keep a Word document or whatever. Just keep something where we're keeping some track of some of the things that we're uncovering about our soul journey.
I think that that's such a powerful way to, go through the world. And most people, we have a hard time just remembering what we did yesterday, much less, these experiences that we've had.
Absolutely. I definitely am one of those. I'm going, what did I have for breakfast yesterday? And I've been one to dig into my journal stack from time to time. I go through it periodically, at least once a year. I read some things. Sometimes I make notes of things I want to do, like goals I have, and I go, oh my gosh, look, I did that. I forgot I even wrote that down 10 years ago. Or oh my gosh, look, there's that idea. And I was just thinking about that the other day that I might want to pursue that. And so you just never know what kind of treasures I think of us as like kind of multidimensional beings. And so the version of ourself who existed in the quote past, which is theoretically simultaneously happening all at once, is leaving us messages in a bottle that our future self could find that could really change our life for the better and give us a lot of insight that would make life so much easier as we continue to move forward. And so it's very valuable.
So I know you are just so good at what you do, and you've done hundreds of, probably not thousands of regressions. What is the most common issue you see resolved by doing a regression?
Wow, what a great question. I think life is simple and yet it's very complicated. So there's really, to me, three main issues that people are coming to deal with: love and relationships, health issues and wellness, and or what I would call physical security, releasing fear or abundance, whatever it is under the umbrella, which we would call security, which might involve fears and phobias or abundance issues and things like that. I think, though, the most common, if you're asking for one most common out of even those three, it's got to be things that deal with the relationships that we're having in our life, whether that's with our family, we've got coworkers, we've got friends, and not any of your listeners, I'm sure, but some of us, including yours truly over here, we all have challenges with the different relationships in our life, and we want to make them better, and we want to understand the dynamics. And past life regression is a super tool for that, because sometimes, I do believe that many of the people who we are going around the block with in our current life are people who we have encountered in previous incarnations. And so sometimes the people who are giving us the biggest challenges, it's hard to realize this when we're going through certain things, but those actually may be the souls who love us the most and who have come here to play these roles for us as if we're all actors on the stage, so that we can get the learnings and get the soul growth that we're all here to get. And so again, just moving into those spaces and looking at some of the most challenging situations we have, through a new lens, getting a new perspective and getting a new maybe appreciation for people who maybe we were not appreciating, to say the least, can just really be transformational. And then it opens that gratitude frequency so that we begin attracting more of what we want in our lives as we move forward.
So I don't know about any of the listeners, but I've only met a few people in my lifetime who are exceptional at relationships. I'm not one of them. I've had to really work at it. So I know what you mean. And it's something that I think most people, as you're saying, it's like a common thread that we all have to work on.
Yeah, it's everybody's got their own ways. Yeah, you see these power couples or just different people and you think, wow, they've got it all together. Sometimes they do, sometimes maybe down the road they won't have it together anymore. I think it's, again, you mentioned earlier how hard we are on ourselves, and I think we do tend to look at some other ideal vision of what we think a relationship or something should look like, and then we wonder why we're not getting there. But I think there's a lot of imperfection in this. And I think that for some people, it might be easier for them to work on some relationships than others. Um, Even if their significant other relationship might be working, maybe they have challenges with coworkers or something. I think everybody's going to have these kinds of relationships because we've come here together to learn and grow and evolve. And so no matter what form that takes, I think we've all got different challenges in those areas. Absolutely.
So, in your book, you've got all these different ancient times listed. I think Egypt's a great one to talk about. Why is that listed in its separate? It's all separate. Why is that listed? And what are some of your experiences with that?
I really have so many clients who have regressed into their past lives in Egypt that I could practically do a book just by itself on Egypt alone. Part of that, I think, comes from the fact that the regressionist, me, you tend to attract people who have similar interests to you. And I had written a couple of books. I've written, I guess, 3 books now, for the Edgar Cayce Foundation, the foundation that is advancing the work of the father of holistic medicine, Edgar Cayce, the world's sleeping prophet. And so Edgar Cayce would go into trance and tell people about their past lives, tell them things that they could heal. And one of the big areas that was covered in those life readings was people who lived in ancient Egypt, and Cayce would recommend different stones and gems. I wrote a lot of books on healing stones, talking about the stones that he recommended to help people, release that karma. So as such, because of that audience that I have through that work, lots and lots of people who I run across believe they lived in ancient Egypt. I think there's something that does happen in the popular culture. I mean, everyone, I don't really know anyone, and I don't know if you do, but who just says, "Oh no, I don't like Egypt." I mean, everybody loves Egypt. It's just, you look at that architecture, you look at those artifacts, and you just think, "My gosh, this is incredible." It's just one of the most incredible places on earth. It's captured our imagination. From a marketing perspective, let's say, it's just very out there in the public arena. It's the topic of many documentaries. And I think one of the things that was interesting for me about writing this book is because I do have so many cases on Egypt, and I do tend to believe there are a lot of people who lived and are reincarnated, who are living now, who lived in ancient Egypt. But the other thing that's happening now in the popular culture is you have so many phenomenal filmmakers out there doing documentaries about, the land that it used to be Mesopotamia or the former Persian Empire and things. We're seeing more of that stuff now. And so this book was the first time that I've ever included any cases on that, because I'm starting to get more cases on those, what I would have said 15 years ago was a more obscure area like ancient Persia. There's more of that now. And I think that's because that's starting to get into our consciousness. So I think part of what causes somebody to remember one past life over another has to do with even what they're capable of articulating, which comes to us through popular culture and media. And now, like I said, we're just in this day and age, we're just so blessed with all these different capabilities we have technologically that we can really dig into some places in the ancient world. But ancient Egypt is one that I feel like it was a grand civilization. And I think there's some, I don't know, almost idealized vision of the people who go into those lives that of just how well the society was running, how advanced they were really spiritually, and things that maybe we on some level long for in this current day and age.
Now, do people who have, let's say you have several people who are having past life experiences of Egypt, in their stories are all different, but past life experience of Egypt, are they typically working through a common issue, like a collective issue?
Sometimes, um, well, I had written a series of books on Egyptian energy healing. And so again, the people who I'm working with, some of them believe they were healers in Egypt. They believe they were like priests and priestesses and temples and things. So that is a lot of the people who I run across. They're remembering, in this case, rather than, oh my gosh, this is something horrible from the past I need to clear, they're really going back there to recall and revisit the gifts of the spirit that they have that perhaps they don't fully consciously remember in their current life. So they're trying to collect a more fully embodied memory of that so that they can start using those skills and techniques in the current life. And then I have had several people who had different phobias and fears. One of the most interesting cases that I ever had about Egypt was in one of my earlier books. I had coined a term that I call supretravy, which is a spontaneously induced past life memory. Because I was one, I went to Egypt and I started having nightmares and I was really traumatized. And I had remembered that I believed that I was one of the people who was building the pyramids in Giza. And so I started this whole series of research where I started realizing that sometimes people, when they travel to different destinations, they can either fall in love with the place and they think they want to move there, or they want to run kicking and screaming down the street because it's so horrible. That sometimes, like the Shakespearean quote, the lady doth protest too much. Are you loving it? Are you hating it? If you're loving or hating situations or people, then there's probably something there that needs healing. And so one of my clients told me that I started identifying it's a large body of work. I started interviewing people about where these spontaneous memories were emerging. And sometimes this happens in museums in front of artifacts. So when we're talking about Egypt, for sure, we know King Tut's materials went all over the United States and all over the world, and people were just completely enthralled by them. But one of my friends had gone to see the exhibit in New Orleans and started having a complete full-blown panic attack in front of the place and started feeling like he was collapsing under a wall of sand. And so they had to pick him up and carry him out of the museum. And so he mentioned this to me, and I said, well, that's when we do the regression, not to remember that you lived in Egypt, but then to heal that. And so he went into the most vivid memory where he believed that he saw himself building one of the tombs for the pharaohs when there was a collapse and everyone in there was killed. And he said his soul just kind of ascended into the afterlife with this really guilty feeling that he wasn't able to do his bidding for the pharaoh. And so we did this big healing on this, which these healing processes are in all my books, where we try to cut cords with these unwanted influences, bring light and understanding. And he just said he felt so much better after that. So there's definitely I've got other case studies of people who got really spooky feelings going to the Nile and were able to go into regression and see like loved ones drowning in the river and just all kinds of things, just too many things to name. But I think fear is always a big one. Relationships are huge. And in this case, soul gifts, because it doesn't always have to be something negative. Sometimes we need to remember the good things that we've done in past lives and bring them forward.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because I think it's interesting. I've had an experience, and I've had friends that have had experiences in different locations where it feels like home. So when we have these really strong connections, is that just what's teaching us that there's something there for us to work on?
I really think it is. The other place it comes from, I put together another book. I have all these books, but about this technique I call the genealogical regression. Sometimes when people were coming to me for past lives, I was intuitively sensing, wait a minute, we need to do some family healing first. So I developed this method where we, instead of taking this guided journey and looking out our eyes and seeing us in ancient Egypt, we float over events and kind of hover over events. And then we can gaze down and notice that our ancestors are having different things happen to them. Normally, it's not pleasant. I mean, they might be in a battle, or maybe somebody's passing away or something like that. But we can consciously go into those events, send light to those events, and then receive the healing through the generations that can actually affect us in the now. And this kind of transformational healing is actually being supported by science, because they are proving now that up to 50% of our personality is actually being brought through our DNA. So this is clinical studies through the National Institutes of Health and others. And they did a study on the descendants of the people who survived the Holocaust, and they noticed that they had higher cortisol levels in their blood. So they were more prone to different kinds of trauma, anxiety, stress, and different heart diseases and things like that than other people were. So we're really starting to understand that some of these unwanted influences, or some of this feeling of, oh my gosh, I love this place. I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago, Marianne, but now I'm knowing more than ever that we have to also say, is this a past life influence, or could this actually be that maybe my ancestor visited this place and loved it, or maybe I have ancestors here I didn't even know because I didn't get on my ancestry.com account today yet, or not. So I think these influencers are really strong, and I think they come to us from these different places. And when you are loving it that much, again, how much of our life is an accident? Were we not kind of drawn to those places? Because I think the soul does want to go back to places where we've been before. And I think we are also so connected to our forebears and ancestors that perhaps we are also just going and retracing their footsteps as well.
Ooh, that is very intriguing. Very intriguing that it might be, something to do with family or a past life, and getting to the point where we can figure out which one that is.
I think we've got a shot at figuring out some of the ancestral stuff. I had taught a 7-week-long class at the Shift Network, and one of the students recently got on. I was doing something else for the Shift Network. She got on and had written a letter saying that during this guided journey to visit her ancestors, she went out to this place, and actually in the guided journey, I mean, this is incredible, but she pulled a name into her mind. She came out of the journey, wrote it down, started looking into it, and actually found these people on Ancestry. And they were real. And she found out that that was a real deal that came out of her subconscious mind. And I think it speaks to something that I haven't really been able to prove in the arena of past lives. I mean, there's many past life regressionists who spend a lot of their careers like hunting down leads and trying to find out if that person really did live in a village and stuff like that. That hasn't really been my focus. But when you're dealing with your ancestors and some of the information that can come through, it's a lot easier now because we've got all these databases. You can actually prove some of this stuff exists. And then to me, it just lends credibility that of something that everybody says when they're kind of trying to dismiss whether or not such a thing as a past life regression is even going to work. They go, well, what if I'm making this up? Or where's this stuff coming from? And the people who are most successful with these kinds of modalities are the ones that say, you know what, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm trusting my higher self and my connection to God's spirit source. And I'm just going to trust that the things I'm getting are real and move forward as if they're real and move forward as if I've released these unwanted influences and I can be happier or whatever it is we're trying to create. They're very, very successful in that. And this was a really cool example of a little bit of evidence,
I love that. Yeah. I love it when science backs it up, because then it really brings it, I think, home for many people, because you always have these folks that are like, okay, well, you might believe, but I need to see the science.
Absolutely. Yes.
Now, do you often see people who have taken like a vow of poverty? Because there's so many people who have issues with money.
That is so common. It's unbelievable. It's a very interesting thing that you can heal using past life regression. People are having challenges, as I mentioned earlier, with relationships and love, health, or with money or security. And so what if, unbeknownst to you, back in Egypt or back in some other time, you were living as an impoverished monk who had turned over all of your worldly goods to the service of God or whatever. And, that's fine and that's wonderful. But if that energy is still impacting you in the current life and causing you not to be able to accumulate wealth or keep hold of anything or whatever it is, then when we go back into those spaces, we revisit those vows and we come to, people can kind of go in there in their mind and have this conversation. Okay, I get it. I took that vow then. I'm glad I did it. It was wonderful. I can bless that and I can release that and know that in this current life, that's not my purpose to do that. I am here to accumulate, or I am here to have a roof over my head, or whatever it is they're trying to do. And we can cut cords energetically with that, create a new reality for ourselves. And then one of the things that's really helpful in regression is to visit what I would call future memories, where we go out into a memory of something that's going to happen in this current life. And because that exists in the field of all possibilities, we can guide ourselves to a place where we are happy and we're healthy. And whatever this issue is that we're working on, like let's say it's the vow of poverty, we can go out into the future where we've successfully released that vow of poverty. And now we're bringing in abundance and prosperity like never before. And then we can start observing ourselves in that future event. Okay, so what did you do to create that? Well, I read a book and then I took the class and then I did this and this and this. And so people can start to kind of reverse engineer the steps that they would take to create greater abundance if that's what they're trying to do. And so if they can come out of the journey, and as I said before, just even though they're going, oh my gosh, this is weird, where did this come from? If they can just own that and just believe in the journey, believe in the information that came from their higher self and their soul essence, and start taking the actions in real life that would lead them to that place where these new things could be created, then real miracles can really happen and people can get really tangible results from this kind of work.
What a powerful exercise that is, to do it from the future.
I really think it is, yeah. Because you're there, you're feeling it. Okay, what does it feel like? What is it, how do you feel? What are people telling you about how this is so wonderful? And you start to really tune into those frequencies and that feeling of having that abundance, if that's what we're working on, then you start to attract it because you shifted your energy.
So I would love to talk with you about off-world, off planet. When we talk about people who have had experiences off planet, is that a large portion of folks that you meet, or what percentage is that?
I would say it's probably not more than 20%. But again, I grew up in New Mexico in Albuquerque, so just north of Roswell. So, I'm definitely open to these kinds of things. And so again, I think that has played a role in maybe 20% of the people I've worked with over the years do end up coming up with encounters that they've had with otherworldly beings or off-planet scenarios where they experience themselves living off-planet. And people say, well, how would they access that versus, anything else? It's still the same thing. If I ask somebody to go back to an origin point of where the issue that they're wanting to address first became a challenge, sometimes they're going to go back to the Middle Ages. Sometimes they might go back to Egypt. And once in a while, they're going to be out there on the planet, dealing with other beings. And so it's kind of the same thing. It's just a different place. But again, I think it has to do with the consciousness of the person who's receiving the regression, if this is something they believe in and they're open to, and the goal being, again, to go back to the earliest point of origin where an issue began, then those lifetimes tend to be some of the earliest if we're talking about time, because I don't really believe time's real in a linear way, but for us to even do a regression, we're kind of in our minds thinking about time as a linear thing. So these off-world experiences are typically seen as some very, very early memories of people interacting on other planets with other beings.
Well, in your book, you share about releasing soul contracts with extraterrestrials. So is that a thing you see often, and what does that look like?
That is actually, yes. That's I don't want to say it's very, very common, but yeah, I have encountered several people who believe that they have contracts with different extraterrestrial groups. A lot of times, the ones that come to mind in this book, and I've written about it before, was people who believe that they had contracts with the Greys, which listeners probably recognize as those very typical stereotyped aliens with the big eyes and the little bodies. So they think that they've had contracts with them. So again, some listeners may say that sounds crazy. I don't believe in any of that. But again, if somebody believes in this and this is where they think they need some healing, then just like you would clear a vow of poverty in your life as a monk, you can go into this space. And I've got a guided exercise here in the book for readers to try and just go meet with any extraterrestrial energies. And just like we're sitting down having a little contract negotiation. So what is it that I signed up for here? And then we find out what that is. And again, just like everything else, does it always have to be bad? No. Is it always horrible? Absolutely not. So if it feels like something empowering and we want to continue on, then we just understand what it is. And that's that. But if it's something that we say, hey, wait a minute, we've been doing this. If this is no longer serving me, or is it time for me to say goodbye? Thank you very much. I'm going to take my little contract, rip it up, and then just go about my way. Then there's a space in there where we could just renegotiate that by having a conversation.
I think that's so empowering for a lot of people that they can make these changes. I would think that maybe they feel that they are, especially when we talk about soul contracts, that's something that they have to do.
I just got an email from someone who was expressing that. She's like, oh, wow. I wrote her back. She's telling me about some contact that she had. And I said, well, just go in and tell them you're done. Just like quitting a job, Oh, wow. That's incredible. I didn't realize I could do that. I think part of the goal of the guided imagery journeys that I've developed over the years is that I think it has to do with going back to when I was first trying to get over my own grief. There's a lot in this world we have no control of, Marianne. You know that we don't have control. Okay, but could we be empowered to control things we can, and we still can make choices? And so if we can go into these spaces where we can start making these empowered choices and just know we can release these things, we can do a lot of these things ourselves. And we really, I feel, using the right tools, we have the answers to some of the pressing questions that we have about our lives. They're within us. If we simply just understand how to extract that information, we can empower ourselves so that we can attempt to, in our inner mind, have a little bit more grounding and control in a world that sometimes seems very uncontrollable.
Well, especially if we're having reactions like fears, or we're coming up against, I believe, like the same pattern, this would help with that, right?
Yes, because we're just finally saying, wait a minute, do that definition of doing the same things over and over again. We don't have to do that. Just notice the pattern. And if we're ready to be done with it, just bless it, learn the lesson, say, yes, I did learn from that. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Okay, great. Got the lesson, got my certificate, graduated, cut the cords, and just move on and just realize, tomorrow's a new day. This moment, this present moment, this moment with Marianne is it. This is it. We're here right now in this moment. And so this is really the only moment that actually matters, and how we can go into these past scenarios to reshape the way we are viewing the past. Just let go of it. It happened. Let go of the way we're viewing it. Let go of the negativity or whatever it is that's been holding you down, and then bring your attention back into this moment so that we can start to move forward. And then the future starts to get brighter and brighter,
So the patterns that we identify, those are really something that we should look at from what I'm hearing. Is that something that usually comes out of a regression? Maybe they're unaware that they have these patterns?
Patterns are a really big part of the healing. And what's interesting is, people aren't coming in necessarily saying, okay, I'm going to find a pattern. I know I've been doing this a lot, but they usually will uncover it just by noticing the scenes. They'll come to their own conclusion going, oh my gosh, I can see that I've been doing this and this and this again and again and again. They kind of come to that epiphany Again, through the script, yes, through the journey itself, but in a way that is very personal. Because it's one thing if I tell you something, but it's another thing if you really go, oh, you just get it. It just makes such a bigger impact. So they're able to get into a space where they just have a different epiphany about the way they're looking at things. They can just stop looking at the events the way they used to look at them, and suddenly that emotional charge is gone, or they're just seeing it differently, and they go, okay, well, done, ready to go. This is healed.
Yeah, next. Yeah.
Been there, done that, got a t-shirt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Or two.
And I'm sure, and I think we all have a bumper sticker for that one. So when people come back from their regression, have you ever had it where maybe they're a little bit more psychic? They come back and report to you later, hey, I've developed psychic gifts because of this, or I'm more sensitive.
That is definitely possible. Yes. I mentioned earlier the people who, a lot of whom are healers, they're energy healers, they're looking at their own healing journeys in this lifetime. They're asking questions, they're maybe healing their fears about coming out as a healer and things like that. And so when they go through these journeys and they can see themselves maybe as a Egyptian priest or priestess, or in some group where they're doing miraculous healings or working with herbs and all the other things that people experience in these scenarios, then when they come out of that, yes, again, they're usually, this is a group that usually really is more open to saying, yes, I'm going to take this information, I'm going to start doing something with it. And you do see so many of them just really growing in their own spirituality, and just really being more and more open to understanding that the things that are coming out of the subconscious are real, and that they are very powerful if we will only listen and move forward with them. So absolutely.
That's fabulous. Love it. Well, in your book, you talk about Greece and many other, ancient civilizations. We're not going to get into all of them, but I was curious because you have a whole chapter on connecting to the oracle. Why is that so important?
I think it's really my personal fascination with ancient Greece. We talk about there's different guided journeys to help people just access different places in the ancient world. And so just for fun, I just thought it would be fun to visit the oracles of Delphi in ancient Greece. This is the where the Pythias used to sit under the stones, and luminaries, including Alexander the Great, would travel through the mountains to go visit these oracles before they would go into war and battle. And I personally think I have a past life connection to that area. It's one of my favorite places in the world. So while I was writing the book, I was just putting together, there's past life regression journeys in there, but there's also several really specific guided journeys for each one of these ancient worlds to help people kind of go inside that ancient world and see what it's like. Some people may think it's interesting. Some people may say, oh, wow, I think I've lived there in a past life. And then others will say, well, that's not really resonating with me, but I just couldn't resist. So people have a chance to dive in and go inside the oracle and receive information. And that is a journey. I don't know. For some people, I've heard that it's really helped them open up. As you mentioned earlier, it's designed to really help you open up your intuition and receive information. And like I said, with every one of them, some will resonate with some people better than others. But again, I just couldn't resist.
Well, I'm glad, because it gives us a new way of looking at how we can use these connections in our lives today.
Yeah, I really like doing a lot of traveling. And the thing I thought was so fun about writing this book is, I've got the guided journeys in there, but just doing some of the historical background of each of these areas. My idea is that the more that we're around different kinds of content, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's a documentary on the Discovery Channel, or you just read this brief history of Mesopotamia or whatever that I'm writing, or ancient Greece, and you learn about the oracles, that it's kind of stimulating the subconscious mind, and you're going, wow, that sounds fascinating. Or as you said earlier, like, I'm loving this, or, oh my gosh, that's giving me a creepy feeling. Well, if it's giving you a creepy feeling, then that might also be going, wait a minute, maybe there's something there. If it's giving you a very neutral feeling or you're just not resonating with it, you don't even notice it. There's so much information here that I think different pieces of it should resonate with different people. And it's really designed to help open up the storehouse of memory that may exist in your subconscious mind to help readers, go in there and figure out, where were you in the ancient world or in other worlds and everything in between.
My goodness, Shelley. I mean, we could talk forever. I just find this so fascinating, especially when we talk about other worlds. I'm like, okay, we have to seriously talk about that. In the ancient worlds, there's so much great information there. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Yeah, my website is pastlifelady.com. I've got my YouTube channel there. I've got a podcast, and my book link is there, and other things, all at pastlifelady.com.
And real quick, do you still do past life regressions, or is that something that you don't do at this point?
Right now, I'm teaching classes rather than doing private sessions. The books have lots of guided journeys in them. So I have an online platform where I guide people through the processes that are in the book. Mm-hmm. I just finished completing a very, very long book, a new one. So I might get back to the private sessions, but right now I'm still finishing the editing and stuff. So I haven't had the availability at this moment.
Well, Shelley, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Marianne. It's a joy to be with you always.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shelley. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Past Lives in Ancient Lands and Other Worlds. Understand your soul's journey through time. Past Lives in Ancient Lands and Other Worlds is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. And of course, remember, support our indie bookstores. You can also purchase this book from the publisher Llewellyn at llewellyn.com. Again, if you'd like to connect with Shelley, you can at pastlifelady.com, where you can learn all about her work, her books, and the courses that she offers. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick moment, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
If not me, then who? This ethos is driving the Travis Manion Foundation to empower veterans and families of fallen heroes to develop character in future generations. In 2007, Marine First Lieutenant Travis Manion was killed in Iraq while saving his wounded teammates. Travis's legacy lives on in the 5 words he spoke before leaving for his final deployment. If not me, then who? Guided by this mantra, veterans continue their service, developing strong relationships in the community, and thrive in their post-military lives. Visit travismanion.org and ensure the character of our nation's heroes lives on in the next generation. If not me, then who?
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
The highly acclaimed and newly released book, The Hand Part 2 by Lynn Van Praagh Grattan, describes the journey between a psychic medium and a family who lost a son. Messages from Beyond Eternity's Gate is of love and healing. For more information, visit www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com. That's www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.